Well, hello, everybody. As we hit 10 o'clock, I think we might make a start so that we're not holding James up today. Welcome, everybody, to another member webinar. Today, we're going to hear from James Houston from the BNG, and we're going to hear about how to use the CTO QualityPortal to address the 5 key areas of risk for home services. Before we start today, I'd like to begin by acknowledging the traditional custodians of all the lands on which we meet, and I pay my respects to all elders, past, present, and emerging, and I extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander peoples that are here with us today. So a little bit about the presentation. BNG is partnered with the CTO to provide the CTO QualityPortal, and today we'll provide an update on how the portal can be used to self-assess against the 5 key areas of risk highlighted by the Aged Care Quality Commission and Safety Commission, Quality and Safety in Home Services Guidance for Governing Bodies. The CTO portal has a new online assessment based on the Commission's self-assessment tool template, which you might also find handy. The platform contains assessments for all the leading standards and much more that I'm sure James will inform you about today. There is also a deep suite of over 500 helpful resources in terms of templates, policies and forms, information sheets and evidence guides. So BNG will run you through all the new additions to the portal and some handy tips on how to streamline your compliance. So as I said, James Houston, hello James, welcome to today's webinar. James will be... James is the director. James is the director of BNG, which is the leading provider of online solutions for Australian community services and health service providers in the areas of quality and service standards, quality management systems, and organisational capacity building. Before I hand over to you, James, just a quick one regarding the question and answers today. If anybody has any questions they'd like to put to James, just pop them into the chat feature today. We think that might be the best avenue in case we don't get to them all, and we can get back to you from there. So if you like, James, without further ado, I can hand it over to you.
Excellent. Thanks, Vicky, and good morning, everyone. So today, as Vicky kindly said in her introductory comments, we're going to take you into the CTO QualityPortal and have a look at some new things in the platform. I think in terms of who's joined the session today, we've got a combination of people that are using the platform already, as well as some that are not familiar with the platform. So for those that are less familiar with the platform, we might just briefly highlight some key features in the platform, but we'll hopefully do it in a way that's interesting for those that are familiar with the CTO QualityPortal already. So I think Vicky's done a pretty good job in terms of introducing it already. But what I might do, I might just share my screen to start off with. And so can you see that, Vicky? That's all clear at your end?
Yep, that's right.
Inside the portal, excellent. So just to start off with, for the benefit of those that are not familiar with the portal, what exactly is the portal and how does it help CTO members? So in short, it's basically an online standards compliance platform. So the idea is that it enables CTO members to centralize and streamline their compliance all in the one place, because we're conscious that CTO members have a couple of different things that you probably have to meet. So it enables providers to self-assess and link evidence against key standards and basically to get you audit ready, so that when it comes to audit time, you can invite in your auditor directly into your account to review all that work and all that linked evidence against the standards to show how you feel that you're complying with a particular set of standards, like the aged care standards. And then, as Vicky pointed out in her introductory comments, there's a very deep suite of helpful resources in the portal as well, in the reading room. Over 500 resources across template policies and forms, evidence guides, and also a couple of interesting new things like some explanatory videos across key standards, which I might just point out a little bit about today as well. So we are here on the homepage of the portal, and one of the things we want to cover off today is, you'll see on the homepage here, we have this nice little infographic around these 5 key areas of risk that have been highlighted by the Commission in relation to quality and safety in home services. And this is guidance material for governing bodies of home service providers. So we'll come back to this in a moment, because I just want to highlight how the CTO QualityPortal can assist with providing a structured way in which the, you guys as CTO members can work through those 5 key risk areas. But there's a few other things I just want to highlight for those that are new to the portal and haven't seen it before as well. I just want to open up the standards tab. So you'll see horizontally across the top of the page to navigate around the portal. We've got these different tabs here. So I want to open up the standards tab and also the reading room, which is the repository of all the helpful resources, because there's a couple of things that I just want to point out in here. So when and we'll come back to the homepage here in a moment, because when we get to the bottom of the homepage, there's a couple of these different CTO members relevant standards or assessments here at the bottom of the page. So when we come to the standards tab, this is where we list all of the different standards in the platform. We've got BOAS and point-to-point under that CTO standards heading. And then we've got this long list, national standards, state and territory standards. So what I just wanted to point out is under this aged care towards best practice heading, right at the top, this is where we have the new assessment around those 5 key risk areas. So by clicking on that star icon, that actually I'm favoriting this particular assessment. So when I come back to my homepage and refresh my homepage, you can see under the My Standards heading, we've got that particular assessment around the 5 key risk areas. But also just for everyone's benefit, if we just go back to the standards tab with the long list of standards in here, you'll see under this best practice heading, we've got a range of different best practice self-assessments across different thematic areas of aged care. Again, we've got the the Department of Health's aged care diversity framework. So we've transposed their 4 diversity action plans into simple online assessments. And then underneath the aged care quality standards, we've got a couple of different assessments. And one of the ones I want to focus on today is this aged care quality standards self-assessment tool, which is basically an online version of the Commission's self-assessment tool, which they have on their website. So I want to have a little bit of a look at that in a moment as well. Just incidentally, while we're here with this long list of standards in the portal, you might just all be interested, but perhaps not directly relevant to everyone here, but literally in the last few weeks, we've added in the bus operator accreditation scheme requirements for Victoria, which are now mandatory for quite a broad range of providers in Victoria. So we've had a number of requests from disability providers and community health services, etc., who are now having to meet this particular set of bus operator requirements. But I think it's a New South Wales audience today, I'm assuming, so probably a little bit less relevant for everyone here. Also, the NDIS Quality and Safeguarding Framework might be relevant to some providers on the call today. So that's just a really quick look at the standards tab. There are a lot of different standards there. I just want to jump across to the reading room for a moment, because the other important point I just want to highlight to both people that are not familiar with the portal, as well as those who are familiar with the portal, they may not be aware that we've recently added in a number of these hopefully helpful video resources. And each video is around about 8 to 10 minutes long, and it's designed to be a simple summary of some of these leading standards. So as we sort of say, just in the brief introductory comments just here, these videos just provide a brief overview of these key standards, and they could be a great resource to share with perhaps a governing body member, a new governing body member, or a new staff member who is not familiar with any of these sets of standards that might be relevant to you as well. Obviously, aged care is probably of particular relevance to everyone here. What we're planning to do is to roll out more of these across different standards. So maybe have a nice, brief summary overview of point-to-point or BOAS, whatever it might be in future. It's a bit of a work in progress, but I think you'll find these are quite helpful to give someone a sound understanding of these key sets of standards. If we just click on this heading here as well, what I wanted to point out, and we then click on the standards at a glance heading down here, we've then also got two things. So under these two headings. So if we look at the aged care quality standards presentation, so this is the basis for the video, for the sort of 8 to 10 minute video. There's just 12 slides, and it's where we talk about how, for example, in this case, the aged care quality standards are structured. And then we provide a brief summary explanation of each of the 8 standards. So this could be a helpful resource, as I said before, for a new board member or a new staff member. Equally, what we've got just here, and this is just a hyperlink straight to the Commission's document. This is just their standards at a glance document, which in a 4-page PDF document lists every single requirement of the aged care standards. So I'd just say that I think those things together, so these two summary documents as well as the video, could provide great resources, you know, for, as I said, new governing body members or new staff members. And even one of our CTO member power users recently actually took some of these videos and added it to their board induction platform that they use, so that when they're inducting a new board member, one of the steps that board member would go through would be to watch that video, for example. Just while we're here in the reading room, again, for those that are not familiar, you know, because there are a lot of resources in here, I just want to point out a couple of very quick things. All the resources are housed under these dozen headings: aged care, disability, and then these broader thematic headings of governance or HR or whatever it might be. But I also just want to point out, and this, even people that are familiar with the platform might not be aware of this, there's a little guide here which explains how you can search for documents in the reading room. So what we've done with a lot of the resources is we have tagged them based on the standards that they're relevant to. So for example, the reading room code for aged care related resources is ACQS1, ACQS2 for aged care resources. So if we just come back to the reading room and we're looking for something under ACQS7, which is the HR standard, we just type in that code into the search bar, and then any resources that we've tagged as being relevant to standard 7 will pop up here. Another thing I just want to point out, just when it comes to resources, is that our content team is currently doing some work around some of the new legislative requirements with those aged care reforms, and they're going to be releasing a number of new resources into the reading room here around things like key personnel policies and procedures, a declaration and undertaking from key personnel checklist for providers, aged care, governing body legislative obligation checklists, etc., etc. So there's a number of interesting new things that will be released, I would say, in the next 2 or 3 weeks. So anyway, that's just a quick look at some of the resources in the reading room. As I mentioned in my intro comments, there's full evidence guides for all the leading standards as well. But let's go back to our homepage, because a couple of the things we just wanted to focus on today were the new self-assessment that we've created based on those 5 key risk areas. So again, just to remind everyone of this fairly lengthy document here that's been put out by the Commission. If we just scroll into the document briefly for a moment and just have a look at this. So, you know, what is the purpose of this guidance material that the Commission's put out? Basically, it's designed specifically for governing bodies of home service providers, and the purpose of the document is to provide guidance in terms of some of the key risks that the Commission has identified that they feel that governing bodies should be attuned to. So if we just scroll a little bit further down, there are these 5 headings: organisational governance, care planning and assessment, clinical care, vulnerable consumers, and management of package funds. And they summarise, what is the problem or risk to be addressed. And then when we scroll further into the document, they've highlighted a couple of key areas for reflection. So under this first heading of organisational governance, what should you consider in reviewing your own performance? There's these three key risk areas under organisational governance. So what we've effectively done in the portal, and I've favoured this assessment, remember it was listed not on the homepage, it was listed in the standards tab, but by favouring that, I've brought that assessment to our homepage. So then if we click into the assessment for the 5 key risk areas, again, we've got a hyperlink back to the underlying guidance material put out by the Commission. And then you'll see here, we have the 5 key areas of risk that we talked about before. And then under each of those 5 key risk areas, we've got a couple of assessment modules. So if we click into any one of these assessment modules, basically what we've done, as I said before, is we've transposed all of that information that's in that PDF document into a series of sort of bite-sized reflective questions, which you could potentially work through individually or as a group to see how your particular organisation might be tracking in relation to those risk areas. So in this case, with this first module that we've clicked into in relation to high impact, high prevalence risks, we have a brief explanation as to what this module is about. It's about ensuring the organisation has governance systems, information management systems, and risk management systems to maintain adequate oversight of care and services and drive positive outcomes for consumers. This includes ensuring that any high impact, high prevalence risks to consumers are identified and managed to ensure consumers have the care and support they need. So then again, for this particular set of reflective questions, we've got a hyperlink back to the exact area that they relate to in the underlying document. And then we simply ask a series of questions. What systems does your organisation have in place to identify and manage high impact, high prevalence risks, and how are these systems reviewed to keep improving outcomes for consumers? So it's just a case of working through these reflective questions. What information do you receive to inform your understanding of high impact, high prevalence risks? Again, a good question to be posed to a governing body. What are the high impact, high prevalence risks for consumers receiving care and services through your organisation? So it's just a case of working through those questions. You can write in qualitative comments if you so choose. You probably don't need to bother linking any evidence in here, but you could potentially do that. Perhaps, members of the executive, for the benefit of the board, could link in some relevant evidence documents there to assist the board in their understanding of how your organisation addresses those particular areas of risk. Once you're happy with the work that you've done, you can simply save your answers and you can move on to the next assessment module around governance systems. So I'm not going to go through the entire 5 key risk areas for today's session. It's more a case of just framing up how the CTO Quality Portal could assist you in working through those. If you've done that work in the platform, it's providing you with that structured approach, and it doesn't have to all be done at once. You might decide in one session we're just going to work through the organisational governance reflective questions. In the next session, you're going to work through the care planning and assessment questions. And then on the back of all the work that you complete, you can generate some summary reports. So when we come to the evidence pack here, we can generate a summary report which lists how we may have addressed all of those questions. So if we click on the Q&A report, for example, and each set of standards or each assessment in the portal has this Q&A report, it then lists all of those reflective questions that you have worked through, and it would capture all of your qualitative responses as well as any linked evidence. And then if you wanted, you could even download that into PDF and potentially, use that as some additional evidence as part of your aged care quality standards work to demonstrate that you had worked through those 5 key risk areas as a group. So that's just it's a quick look at that particular new assessment in the platform. What I also wanted to do today, as Vicky mentioned in her introductory comments, was also just highlight this particular assessment, which is relatively new. Well, when I say relatively new, it was added in earlier this year, probably 4 or 5 months ago. But it's an assessment for the aged care quality standards, which a number of aged care providers asked us to add into the portal, because effectively what they said to us was, look, when we go to the Commission's website, they've got this nice, simple self-assessment tool document on their website. Is it possible if we could just add an online version of this into the platform? So again, just to briefly remind everyone, because I'm assuming probably everyone's fairly familiar, would have seen this self-assessment tool from the Commission. Basically, for each requirement, if we look at the very first requirement here under Standard 1, which is treating each consumer with dignity and respect, there's 4 things that the Commission would like or suggest providers can do. You can self-rate yourself against this particular requirement. You can provide qualitative commentary around examples of actions and evidence. You can add in areas for improvement, and you can then also add in qualitative comments around any other information you may choose to provide. So what I just want to highlight is how, again, that's being transposed into the portal. So when we come into Standard 1, we expand the heading for Standard 1, under which there are 6 indicators, and we click into the very first, or 6 requirements. If we click into that first requirement around treating each consumer with dignity and respect, there's the definition of that requirement. We've then got a hyperlink through to the Commission's 200-page guidance doc. So this takes us straight to page 14, which is requirement 3A, where the Commission explains the intent of the requirement, reflective questions, and examples of actions and evidence at a consumer, workforce and organisational level. And then simply we can work through those 4 items that the Commission has in its Microsoft Word self-assessment template. So we can rate ourselves meeting or exceeding. If we put ourselves at the top level, we get this nice green tick. If we put ourselves at one of the lower maturity score levels, that creates an action prompt, which is where we can assign a task to a colleague where we may want them to do work in relation to that particular requirement. But for the benefit of today's session, maybe we can just tick things off as exceeding, and then we can just add in a little bit of qualitative commentary. I'll just copy and paste some bit of Latin gobbledygook just to get some sort of commentary in here. You'll notice that as we add in qualitative comments, each text box allows you to add in 3,000 characters, which equates to probably about 500 words, maybe a bit more or less depending on the size of the words that you use. And then we can save our answers to this particular assessment module for the very first requirement. You'll then also see that we have, I've already in this demo account added in some sample evidence documents. And the thing I just want to point out here for everyone's benefit is, over and above linking in maybe our diversity policy, which might be in PDF format or Word doc, we can also add in a hyperlink that might take us to our documentation management system. So we use SharePoint, so that goes straight to that privacy policy. Or we could put in a hyperlink that goes to a folder of documents in SharePoint too. So it just can be handy to know that when you're using hyperlinks, it might be not just to a single doc, but to a bundle of docs. And that can also be helpful when you're thinking about the currency of the evidence that you might be linking against the standards as well. So then again, if we go to the evidence pack for this particular assessment, similar to the evidence pack that we went to for the 5 key risk areas, when we come here, we can then see all of the evidence that we might have linked against this particular part of the standards. If we scroll down as well, I just also want to point out that, you know, when we get down to organizational governance, for example, I might even put in a hyperlink to some other software platform that we might use that's our core risk management platform. So we might have our risk register on a different software platform. We can put a hyperlink to, you know, other third-party platforms like that. So just to give you an idea around, you know, as a handy tip around how you can use hyperlinks as sources of evidence. If we then generate the Q&A report similar to the 5 key risk areas Q&A report that we generated before, this is the Q&A report for the Aged Care Quality Standards self-assessment tool. You can see there's our linked evidence on the right-hand side. We said we were exceeding, and then here's all this qualitative commentary, which was not terribly insightful, but we added in here as well. And then that can be downloaded into PDF and taken offline. So that's just a quick look at a couple of those different items that we wanted to highlight today. So I think we're near on reaching the half-hour mark. So I might even just pause for a moment, Vicky, and just see if anyone has any questions at all.
No questions have come through, James.
Excellent.
So perhaps our audience is more familiar with the portal.
Okay, well, I might just suggest a few other handy tips for organisations who are familiar with the portal as well, and just highlight a few key points. So number one is, we just want to remind everyone that you can invite in as many staff members as you want. It's up to you. Obviously, the idea of the portal is it's where you address your organisational compliance. So you might want to limit how many people that you invite into the portal because you don't want them to change your answers or, you know, unlink evidence, etc. But it is worthwhile noting that you can also invite in, you know, a staff member or a board member as a reviewer. So they could have that ability to review the work that you've done in the platform as well. And actually, on that point of reviewers, another handy tip is, one of the things we noticed is that for organisations, when they're going through an aged care audit, like often a commission assessor doesn't have a lot of time with the audit. And one handy tip we think around reviewers is it can be a good idea to set up a dedicated reviewer login. So if we just go back a step, when it comes to inviting a staff member into your account or a reviewer, what you can do is you can type in their email address and invite them in as an administrator, user, or reviewer. But the point I wanted to make is you can set up a dedicated reviewer login. So let's say it was, you know, Vicky and the team at the CTO wanted to have a dedicated reviewer login for their own account in the CTO QualityPortal. They could set up an address which might be, you know, reviewer@cto.org.au, because I think that's, Vicky, that's your kind of basic email configuration. If you set up a dedicated login, which was reviewer@cto.org.au, and you chose the password, then when it comes to your audit, you don't actually have to invite in the auditor because you've already set up a reviewer login. You could just simply hand them the login ID plus your password that you assign to that login ID, the reviewer@cto.org.au login ID, and that way they could just log in immediately. The other alternative, of course, is you can actually invite in any third-party reviewer. You can invite in any third-party reviewer by typing in their email address, but that implies they need to receive the email, then open up the email, click on the invitation hyperlink to accept that email, to then have access to the platform. And it just sort of slows down the process. Just means they need to make sure they got the email. Yes, they have actually accepted the invitation, and then they log in. If you just give them the login ID and the password, they can log in immediately. And at the end of the audit, you could simply change the password so that they can no longer log in. So I think that's just a handy tip to speed up that process. A couple of other small handy tips. We've had providers who, with a standards action plan here, over time, they might have identified quite a lot of actionable items as part of their self-assessment. So, and you identify actionable items, you know, if we just come back in here into the Commission self-assessment tool, again, just for the benefit of those that are not familiar, if we say that we're developing and we assign a task to James and give him a due date of whenever it is, and say, please do ABC. So here we've assigned an actionable item to James. We want him to do this. Save our answers. James would receive his automatic email notification. Over time, we might have a lot of actions that we've identified. And there's two ways in which we can generate our list of those actions. If we go to the standards action plan, you can see here, I can now generate a list of any of those actionable items. So this is where we said, James, please do ABC. So we've generated that action plan here in this tab. But I also wanted to remind everyone who's familiar with the portal, for each set of standards, it has its own drop-down menu to the right-hand side of the progress bar. So you can download the action plan for any set of standards. So here from our homepage, we could download our action plan for the aged care quality standards self-assessment tool. We can download it straight into Excel, Microsoft Excel from the homepage. We don't necessarily have to go to the standards tab. And that can be particularly helpful where you've got a very large number of actionable items, which are a bit difficult to go through on screen. You can just very quickly generate that Excel download straight from the homepage. Yeah, so look, Vicky, I don't want to take up too much more of everyone's time. We were sort of budgeting for just a sort of brief half-hour overview.
Yeah, no, that's okay. We have had a question pop up, James, so we can address that one from Sally. I've heard that the Aquis reviewers won't accept reviewing digital platforms. Can someone shed some light on this? A digital login is great, but not if the assessor won't use it.
Well, I certainly haven't heard that, because we know of lots of organisations where the Commission's assessors had said, wow, this is great. So I think the issue that you potentially have is that obviously there's a very, very large number of assessors, and you can never predict exactly what a particular assessor is going to say. Some assessors are less tech savvy, and they might be a bit sort of spooked by something that they're not familiar with.
Yeah.
But that's where, you know, it's important to bear in mind that you can download into PDF all of that work and give them, you know, a PDF document that lists all of your answers and names all the evidence docs. You can have the platform open, for example, and have the evidence pack open, so it's immediately there right in front of them, so that they can simply click on all the evidence documents in the evidence pack. So I think it's just a case of being prepared, thinking, okay, if someone turns up and we need to present this information in the most efficient way possible, you know, just be ready to have that information at hand. But no, there's certainly no edict from the Commission saying that they won't look at you know, online repositories of information.
Yeah.
And in fact, I think, previously the Commission's sort of indicated that providers can use a range of different ways. I showed you before the Microsoft Word doc self-assessment tool. That's on the Commission's website, but they don't prescribe that all providers must use that specific document. They've got one in Word, they've got another one in Excel, as I'm sure everyone's aware, but you don't have to use those documents specifically.
Yeah.
I think
Sally,
yep. Sorry.
That's all right. Sally does say thank you for that feedback. She said, given we're now in a digital world, it does seem a little bit old-fashioned to kill trees just to create evidence.
Exactly. And I think, that's very much the old-fashioned approach. Was an auditor, whether it's aged care or, disability or whatever it might be, an auditor might have said, look, I'm coming in this week and I want to see all of your policies and procedures on the boardroom table. So you'd have to print out the whole lot and, chop down a small forest. and we certainly know that, a lot of providers these days are quite sensitive to that and deliberately don't want to print off a whole lot of documents, which they then subsequently check out, or they chuck out because they don't work in hard copy themselves. They certainly want to encourage all of their auditing bodies, not just aged care assessors, but NDIS assessors or whatever it might be, NDIS auditors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you very much for that feedback. But today's been really good. Thanks, James, for taking the time out of your day to present to us. For those that are familiar and those that aren't, it's been good to get a little bit more of an understanding and also those handy tips. So I'm sure that they can have a little field on through and get a bit comfortable with it.
Yeah,
and
no
James
problem.
has also offered very kindly to give a one-on-one. If anybody needs to reach out to James just for a bit more of a better understanding and they'd like that one-on-one chat time, James has offered his time. So don't hesitate to let us know. I'll put his details into our member update as usual with the recording link to today's presentation. And we'll also see James at the conference coming up in October. For those that are attending, James will be there on the 25th. So pop in and say hello as well.
Yeah, that's right.
All right. Well, thanks, James. I appreciate it. You've got back-to-back webinars and you're a very, very busy man. So we'll let you go and enjoy your day. And thanks very much for your time.
Thanks, Vicky. Speak soon.
Thank
Bye,
you. Thanks,
everyone.
everybody. Have a good day and we'll see you at the next webinar.
Bye.
Bye.